Okay, lovely. Like I said, happy Earth Day, everybody. Thank you so much for making the time to join us this afternoon. For those of you that have joined, I'm Sarah. I'm joined by Lachlan. We'll introduce ourselves properly in just a moment. Um, the purpose of this webinar today is, as it's Earth Day, it's a prime opportunity to really celebrate our incredible planet, and to really think about the things that we can be doing to care for it and to look after it. And particularly when working with children, we know young people are the most passionate planet protectors around. So really ensuring we're able to really equip them and enable them to take on that role. So this session is all about bringing climate action and education to your school, starting with plastic. So during the session, we're going to cover a few things. I'm hoping my slides are going to play. There we go. We're going to have a look at the connection between plastics and climate so that there's better understanding around, how these two things are connected and why reducing plastic waste is so important as part of a climate action plan. We'll cover some free resources that are available to you and how you can access them, touch on the DFE strategy and what this means for you and your school, and also how the Climate Ambassadors Hubs can help you to really create impactful climate action plans. And I will allow Lachlan to go into lots of detail on that for you in just a little while. So to get started, I'll introduce myself and Common Seas. So I'm Sarah, I'm a qualified teacher and I've been working in the education for sustainability sector for the last 15 years. I started off as an environmental lead in a primary school in London. Almost 5 years ago now, I joined Common Seas, and Common Seas is a not-for-profit on a mission to stop a flow of plastic pollution to protect our ocean, our health and our future. So we have a few different things that we do to try and achieve this. So we partner with governments, particularly small island developing states, to drive policy changes. We conduct research on human health and the impacts of plastic, and we work to empower young people through our education programme. So why should you teach about plastics? Well, there are many good reasons, and hopefully we'll cover some of them today. But the Department for Education's policy is a really good starting point. So if you haven't come across it yet, in 2022, the government announced a new strategy on sustainability and climate change in schools. The aim of this strategy is to really establish the UK as world-leading education sector in sustainability and climate change by 2030. And they've set a target as part of this for all schools to have a sustainability lead and a climate action plan in place by the end of this year, which is not long to go. And I think lots of schools perhaps still aren't necessarily aware of this target. So it's something that we're really here to support with and to help you know sort of a bit more about what's involved and the support that's available for you as well. So in terms of plastic pollution and where this fits in, it's one of the biggest environmental problems of our time, but it's also a really, really powerful topic. So it covers a multitude of environmental and social issues spanning from resource consumption, circular design, to marine biodiversity, human health, and of course, with today's topic, global climate change. But on top of that, it's also a very tangible topic. So particularly when working with children, this is so important. It's something that every single one of us, no matter our location, our age, our experience, we can see the plastic that we use. And also we can see the impact that that has. But more importantly, we can see the positive impacts that we can have. So the things that we do can make a real difference. And for young people to be able to see that change and see the role they can play is incredibly empowering. So I thought we would just kick off today with a little quiz about a bit about climate and plastic. We often do a quiz when introducing this topic in schools, whether to teachers or to students. It's just a bit more of a fun way to cover some quite deep topics. So this is a true or false quiz, and we'd love you to join in. So if you think the statement that we share is true, I'd love you to give a thumbs up. I can't see anybody's cameras on at the moment. Perhaps that's just my screen not showing me them. But if you could use your emojis or pop your thumbs up, thumbs down in the chat, then we'll be able to see your vote. So just to have a quick practice, if you know what to do for this quiz, give me a thumbs up. Are you seeing any thumbs up, Lachlan? Oh, I see one in the chat. Great. Brilliant. Okay, let's get going. Oh, someone just joining us. There we go. Let them in. All right, so the first one, we're going to start off with a nice ocean literacy one. Here we go. The ocean is one of our best defences against climate change, true or false? So the ocean does a lot for us. It provides us with food, livelihoods, recreation, but does it defend us against climate change? What do you think? Seeing some thumbs up here. Great work. All right, let's find out. Okay, it is true. So not just the lungs of our planet providing 50% of the oxygen we breathe, but the ocean is also our largest carbon sink. So it's a vital buffer against the impacts of climate change, absorbing around 25% of carbon dioxide emissions. So when making space for learning about environmental issues, it might be hard to decide what to prioritize. There's so many things to consider and to bring into your school. But actually, the truth is that many of the crises facing our planet are actually interconnected. For example, when learning about climate change, plastics plays a really important part because the plastics industry is incredibly carbon intensive. So around 99%, almost all of the plastic in the world is made from fossil fuels. And globally, we create a huge amount of plastic waste, around 220 million tonnes every single year. And that amount is continually growing. So at the moment, plastic accounts for around 3.4% of global greenhouse gas emissions, which is actually more than flying. And a lot of people will think about whether they'll take a flight somewhere when they're considering their own carbon footprint. But not many people necessarily think a bit closer to home around their plastic use. And then on the current trajectory, this is actually set to increase to around 1/5 of global greenhouse gas emissions by 2040. So plastic is significantly connected to the climate crisis. Okay, on to our next and final statement for today. There is more plastic than fish in the ocean. True or false? Now, this is a statement you may have heard before. I'm sure we all agree there's lots of fish in the ocean, but is there more plastic than fish? Okay, I'm seeing lots of thumbs up, and I hope that you're wrong. Let's find out. Okay, so the answer is false, with the caveat for now. So this is a tricky one. Actually, there was some research published that had this statement that there'll be more plastic than fish in the ocean by 2050. But the truth is, it's an incredibly hard thing to measure accurately. So, comparing the weight of plastic versus the weight of fish, it would be very difficult to make that statement confidently. But what we do know is that a truck's worth of plastic is entering our ocean every single minute. So the amount of ocean entering our ocean is incredibly significant, and it is possible. So let's just take a second to think then about the plastic that we've perhaps used in our lives already today. Maybe the plastic that you're using right now. I've got plastic equipment on my head to enable this webinar. I'm using a laptop. There's plastic all over the place. Even when you're really conscious of it and trying to avoid it, it's a really difficult thing to avoid because it is actually an incredible material and it can be used for so many different things in so many different ways. And many of these things are incredibly useful and helpful. But some of them are things that are made to be used just once, maybe for an incredibly short period of time and then thrown away, things like single-use plastics. And this is where the plastic problem really stems from. And as an example, just in the UK, we use around 35 million plastic bottles every single day. And this is a country where we have access to clean tap water in most buildings, particularly in our homes, in our workplaces, and in our schools. So plastic really is one of the biggest challenges of our time. And it is absolutely everywhere now. It's in our ocean, it's in our food. And Common Seas research actually found a couple of years ago that it's also in our blood. And there's more and more research coming out to show that plastic is in our bodies. So to tackle this problem, it's something that really we all need to be playing a part in. Just in the few comment from James, yes, completely agree. So this is why we teamed up with Kids Against Plastic. If you haven't come across them before, they're a fantastic charity run by young people for young people, founded by Amy and Ella when they were just 10 and 12 years old. So we teamed up with Kids Against Plastic to create Plastic Clever Schools. And this is an award to help your school reduce waste with students at the heart of the action. So to complete this award, there's just 3 stages: inspire, investigate, and act. And these stages help your students to really go through a meaningful process to learn more about plastic pollution, investigate it in your local environment and in your school, come up with action plans to tackle that plastic, and then deliver that action to get your whole school reducing plastic waste. So far, we have 1,370 schools taking part across the UK and worldwide as well. And that is incredibly exciting to see the action of these young people in these schools in so many different places. So to show you in just a little more detail, I'm going to share a video now from made for some children in secondary school in Leicester, actually, for this one. Hopefully it works. Please let me know if the sound doesn't come through. Let's give it a go. Hold on, video won't come up either. That's not a good start. There we go. All right, let's see.
We're sick of plastic pollution.
We don't just want to talk about it or learn about it.
We want to be part of the solution.
By joining Plastic Clever Schools, we inspire our friends to join in.
Our little pic showed that plastic waste is a real problem in our playground and in our local environment.
We investigated inside our school too. Our results helped us see that plastic bottles and cookie wrappers have got to go.
So we're taking action, starting by spreading the message to our peers, building campaigns to change our daily behaviours, and working with our school staff to look at our supply chain.
It's amazing our head teacher's involved too.
It turns out every single one of us can make a difference.
All we need to do is start! Up and away!
Hope you could all hear that okay. I think it was just nice to share an example of a school in action delivering on this, really exciting award with the children taking the lead. And we have incredible examples on our website from schools of all different ages. We've got nurseries that have completed the challenge. We've got primary schools, we've got secondary schools, we've got international schools. It really is a project for anyone to take on. So please do check out the website. We've got an inspiration page where you can see some really lovely examples of the work that young people are doing to reduce plastic waste in their schools. So to help make this possible, as I mentioned at the start, we've got lots of resources that you can access completely free to bring into your school. I'm going to mute that. There we go. So we have for teachers, we've got a teacher toolkit, one specifically for primary and one for secondary schools. And these go through sort of the 3 stages with the step-by-steps of what needs to be delivered in terms of the evidence to become Plastic Clever, but also with examples of the resources that are available for your students and additional resources to help you take this work beyond your student group and into your community and even further if you want to. So there's lots of supporting resources. So as well as the Plastic Clever School Award resources, there's also curriculum resources to support your journey as well. So just a quick overview of these. Now, these resources are not a requirement to becoming Plastic Clever, but they are a really fantastic resource if you want to enhance learning opportunities or go a bit deeper on these topics. So we've got resources at the moment for age 5 to 16. I think we had a nursery joining up today, and I'm excited to say that we are in the process of finalising our early years resources, which we'll be putting out very soon. So we'd love to share those with you. These resources are aligned to the national curriculum in England. They are aligned to UNESCO's Education for Sustainable Development Framework, the UN Sustainable Development Goals, and they've also received a Quality Climate Education mark from Royal Meteorological Society as well. They are off the shelf, ready to go, and completely free as well. Now, of course, I mentioned that this should be a student-led process in terms of becoming Plastic Clever Schools. So we've also got lots of resources for your students. We have a free workbook that is a digital workbook available online. Within this workbook, there is, as with the teacher one, a guidance through the 3 stages with sort of step-by-steps, the evidence that needs to be collected and submitted, which can look different for every school. But also some learn more sections that really help introduce key concepts such as marine plastic pollution, climate change, circular economy. And it's also full of really lovely examples and templates and great ideas from other children from around the world as well to help inspire along the way. So we really believe that a youth-led approach is absolutely essential. With so many complex issues affecting our planet, eco-anxiety is very real. I certainly know it's something that I feel from time to time, and particularly for young people, it's definitely something that is a concern. So putting the action back in their hands, giving them the agency to drive meaningful change in their schools and communities, this is something we would really love to see reflected in school climate action plans. And so on that note, I will hand over to Lachlan now to have a closer look at the DfE policy and climate action plans and the support available for you through the Ambassador Network.
Thanks very much, Sarah, and hi folks. Hope you all had a restful break over the last couple of weeks. So yeah, as Sarah mentioned, I'll be speaking a bit about climate action plans and support available to you through the Climate Ambassadors program to try and make it as impactful as possible in your school setting. So I'm Lachlan, and I'm the regional hub manager for the Climate Ambassadors program for London. So we're based at the UCL Climate Action Unit, and we're working with individual schools kind of wherever you're based in London, but also with local authorities as well, where possible. Thanks. Yeah, thanks, Sarah. Next slide, please. So just to very briefly mention, it is a national program. As I said, we're based in London at UCL, but whether a couple of people on this call might be from just outside London, so you can still get in touch with us and we'll direct you to the regional hub for your region of London, your region of England. So don't worry about that. And then also just to say we're working with some sister projects who are within the same consortium of the program. So we're working with Let's Go Zero, who you may have heard of, who have climate action advisors, as well as the National Education Nature Park program, who focus on biodiversity, and also Sustainability Support for Education, which is an online platform which collates and quality assures many different kinds of actions that you could put on a climate action plan. So the program exists to help realize the Department for Education Sustainability and Climate Change strategy, which Sarah mentioned earlier. It exists to help education settings develop impactful climate action plans, and specifically to help you access free guidance, support, and potentially funding for specific actions or activities relating to putting a climate action plan together. So in London, the way the program works varies slightly depending on what part of England you're in. But in London, what we focus on is supporting settings to create CAPs by advising you, education staff, on next steps based on your specific context. So listening to your needs, or maybe some of the challenges or opportunities within your specific school community or the part of London you're in, because we know it's not really a one-size-fits-all approach. There's no point in saying, here, you use this one template no matter what your circumstances are. We tried to make it as bespoke as possible. Also connecting you with volunteer support, and then signposting you to relevant resources and actions that you might want to include. So what I'll briefly do is I'll cover some suggestions or some guidance on what a climate action plan is. Don't worry if you haven't heard about it before today. It's great that you've come along if you're not sure what it is exactly, and it's definitely not too late to get started. If you have heard of it, heard of what a climate action plan is, it might be useful still to kind of get a reminder of the kinds of things that should be included on that action plan. So the Department for Education expects every school in England to have a climate action plan in place by the end of 2025, as Sarah mentioned, and also to have a sustainability lead in place by the end of 2025 as well. So this is something the DfE expects of every school in the country. And the two main asks or suggestions that they have for schools are that the actions on the plan cover 4 areas or 4 pillars of action, 4 different kinds of action that the Department for Education has identified, and also that it contains some kind of information detailing how those actions will be achieved. So some information about a timeline or maybe who will carry out the actions. There's no more specific guidance or any kind of rigid requirements beyond that. But we also know, in addition to those kind of specific recommendations from the DFE, that for an action plan to be meaningful and to be impactful, and not to just be a document that takes up a couple of hours of your time that you have to fill in and then it gets saved somewhere and then it never sees the light of day again, we know it should also record actions that are already happening in your school or that have already taken place, because it's really important, not only for practical reasons to know what's happened already. You might be aware of some actions that you're already taking as an individual, but also that colleagues are taking. And it's really important to get a sense of what your starting point is. But it's also important to celebrate the fact that you might already be doing something and you're not starting from a completely blank slate, even if it's just one or two small initiatives. It's important to celebrate that and acknowledge that work is happening already, and then you're building on that foundation. It's also important to identify school-specific, long-term or strategic goals. So in addition to maybe smaller scale, kind of actionable activities that might be able to take place over the next school term, it's also important to identify things that maybe can't happen within this school year or even within the next 12 months. That's something you'd like to work towards. Maybe there's something you'd like to speak to senior leadership about, or speak to school governors about, that realistically will take maybe a couple of years. It might take some kind of exploration of funding. For example, if you want to look at structural changes to your school, if you want to look at making the windows more heat efficient, for example, that's a good thing to identify, but there's no pressure to say we'll change all of the windows by the end of 2025. That's not at all an expectation. It's also important to have some kind of identification of individuals who are responsible for taking actions, but also just gathering resources. So, for example, there might be someone, there might be a premises manager or someone in the estates team who will have information on energy usage that, if you're a classroom teacher, you may not have that information. So that can even be an action on your action plan, is to, within the next kind of 6 months, to assemble the information that you need to then make a more informed decision about certain actions you want to take. Or linking it back to plastic, thinking about some kind of information you need to do an audit on the plastic usage in your school. And then finally, but definitely not least, we really strongly recommend that you look at how to get approval or support from school leadership, because we know that for things to be embedded within the school community, and to kind of be able to be reviewed regularly, it's important to get school leadership on board. And it's also important that climate action plans and the responsibility for completing them and implementing them, that doesn't just fall on the shoulders of yourselves or one or two staff members who we know will already be really busy. You have a lot on your plates already. We don't want this to be something that ends up being your sole responsibility. We're really keen to support you and to work with you to spread that responsibility across the school community wherever that's possible. And that really involves getting school leadership on board. So just to quickly mention those 4 pillars or areas of action that the DFE have identified are decarbonisation, adaptation and resilience, biodiversity, and climate education and green careers. And these are areas that the DFE wants every climate action plan to clearly address. Now, that can take form in a number of different ways. They don't have a single template or formula they want every school to use. There's no official kind of approved template that you have to use. We have created a template that I'd be very happy to share with you, that we can share with schools, so you're not starting from nothing. But that can be adapted based on what you think makes sense in your context, and you can emphasize certain areas or certain pillars more than other ones if you find it easier or more effective to focus on some areas rather than others. But the reason it might make sense to follow the 4 areas the DFE have recommended is it's quite likely that they will think about these 4 pillars moving forward in the years to come in terms of funding or activities or initiatives. So it will be quite useful if you have your actions kind of pre-organized or sorted already into these areas, so that you know if there are funding calls for decarbonisation activities, for example, you have them ready to go and you're kind of hitting the ground running. So I'll hand over to Sarah for a moment here, because she's the expert with plastic waste. But we also thought it would be really helpful to just illustrate how all of those amazing actions and initiatives that Sarah has mentioned and that Common Seas focus on, they can be implemented or aligned fully with completing a climate action plan. So it's not the case that these have to be 2 separate things that you have to choose between. Actually, it can be 2 birds with 1 stone, and completing a lot of those actions that Sarah mentioned can strengthen your climate action plan and can help you to complete your climate action plan.
Thank you, Lachlan. Yeah, exactly. I think that's such an important point, and we try to make sure that we're not doing something separate that means extra work. So where we can align to things, I just think it's so helpful and important. In terms of decarbonisation, we talked earlier about sorry, the little clicker's not working again. We talked earlier about the impact of plastic on greenhouse gas emissions and how carbon intensive the whole industry is. So by finding the plastic that you can reduce in your schools and taking action to make those reductions, particularly for the long term, that really can contribute to decarbonisation. And there are tools out there that can help you, if you want to go that step further, understand sort of the amount of carbon that's sort of contributed by each type of plastic waste. So that's certainly something that's quite interesting. So that's one way. In terms of biodiversity, obviously, protecting your local environment from plastic pollution is one way. So keeping plastic out of your local environment through those reduction efforts, but also regular cleanups are part of the Plastic Clever Schools process as well. So going out, cleaning up plastic that has become litter, which can be really harmful to local biodiversity, but then also using that as an opportunity for your students and for yourselves to really understand those broader local environmental issues, as well as just the plastic context for your own school. And then in terms of climate education, we've got lots of resources that help promote awareness of plastic waste, its solutions, how it connects to other environmental issues, particularly to climate change, and connecting into many different areas of the curriculum. We also provide teacher training events, often looking at different particular subject matters relating to these topics. And then in terms of adaptation and resilience, there's nothing on here, but of course, with such a practical resource, with students very involved, they're learning new skills, they're developing passion for these topics. And all of those things are essential tools for adaptation and resilience in the future.
Thanks so much, Sarah. So yeah, hopefully that's just a quick illustration of how even if you just wanted to focus on plastic usage, for example, if that was an interest of yours or something you think would engage students and staff, as I think it definitely would, based on what Sarah had shared earlier, you could just use that as the focus of your climate action plan, because what we recommend strongly is it's really quality over quantity. So rather than trying to kind of look at all of the different options out there, because we know there's a lot of different possible actions out there you could take, rather than kind of making a wish list or becoming overwhelmed and thinking, oh, well, there's kind of 20 or 30 things that we could do or that I think would be impactful in our school. Really try to focus on a handful that will be impactful, and that will set a solid foundation for future actions moving forwards. Because what we see when we support schools time and again is once you get a couple of examples of positive action, no matter what the scale is, then that can become a kind of a positive cycle, and it can snowball into getting more and more people in the school community on board. So really, as Sarah said, you could even just pick each of those examples of actions initially to get your climate action plan started. and then review it next year or next term, and then look at what you'd like to do moving forward to build on those actions. So yeah, just to reiterate some kind of general tips for what makes a climate action plan impactful. It's quality over quantity. Actions that align with other school priorities is really important. For example, if your school is interested in energy saving already, maybe that's something you'd like to look at and think about how to present certain actions as positively impacting energy usage or decreasing energy usage. Thinking about actions that are feasible given your specific context. So we know that some schools have lots of green space just because of where they're located. Other schools won't have that much green space. So maybe thinking about that in terms of what's realistic based on the resources that you have. Getting buy-in from your school's leadership, as I mentioned, that's really crucial. We even, in some cases, we've been successful in if a staff member has come to us and asked for support and then worked with us a little bit. In a couple of cases, they've approached their school leadership and asked for some timetabled time, and they've gotten some timetabled time because we've been able to demonstrate that actually this is a good investment of that staff member's time as sustainability lead, that it links into the DFE's strategy, etc. So that's also a potential benefit from getting buy-in from your school leadership. Setting a realistic timeline, as I mentioned, the requirement from the DFE is to have a climate action plan in place by the end of 2025. They're not asking for any kind of evidence of completed actions by 2025. So it's more effective if you think about maybe as I've said here, a balance of short, medium, and long-term actions. So what are a couple of actions you could do maybe in the summer term before July? One or two things. What are a few things you'd like to do by the end of the next school year? So by July 2026. And then even thinking maybe longer term, what would you like your school to look like in kind of 3 or 4 years? And what are some structural changes you want to start working on to start gathering information or evidence that you can make the case to your school leadership that, for example, maybe you want a green wall, or maybe you think that there should be a different kind of a more permeable surface in the school playground, for example. And then finally, and this is really crucial, is ensuring regular. So by regular, we suggest at the very least, this is annual, a regular review of the climate action plan so that it becomes something that, just like the safeguarding policy or looking at kind of academic progression within the school, it also becomes a document that is regularly reviewed from, again, ideally involving the school leadership in that review and kind of checking your progress against the targets that you set at the last review. And again, there's no penalty for not meeting certain targets, which is the nice thing. It's purely about what are you doing, what actions are you taking to improve your school community and to make your school site more sustainable. I see there is a question there, but I'll just wrap up on this slide and then hopefully we have time for a couple of questions, Sarah. So yeah, just next steps. If you'd like to follow up or you'd like to receive some support from us at the London Regional Hub, and I see a couple of familiar faces, I think, or names actually that we might have had emails from in the last couple of months. But if you'd like to reach out, please do feel free to email us. Maybe Sarah, you can add that email in as a follow-up to today, which would be great. I'm very happy to have a quick call, like kind of a 15-20 minute call with you, either during the school day or just after the school day, to get a sense of what your needs are or what things you'd like to focus on, and we can take it from there. We can also connect you with volunteer support. So a focus of the Climate Ambassadors program is to connect schools with shorter term support with specific actions requiring technical expertise, but also longer term support with writing the climate action plan. So we provide free training for volunteers from your school community, like parents or governors, to train them to become a climate ambassador, who can then sit down with you as the school staff member and think about, okay, how can we get certain members of staff on board? How can we make this as impactful as possible? And then finally, we can also signpost you to relevant resources. So we have compiled a list of actions that you can consider for your climate action plan. We have about 15 to 20 for each of those 4 areas, and you can have a think about maybe if 1 or 2 of those it would make sense to focus on for your climate action plan. And we also have a climate action plan template and a partially completed climate action plan that we can share with you if you follow up with us, that I'd be really happy to share with you as well to kind of, again, get the ball rolling. So yeah, I'll leave it there.
Thank you very much. Yes, and then just to wrap up from my side, Plastic Clever Schools, as I mentioned, it's completely free. You can register at any time. It's very flexible in terms of how your school approaches the challenge. Some schools pick up a day of action to kick things off, and then over time embed those action plans. Other schools do it across a year, across a term, across a week. It really depends on your approach. It's a very flexible tool. So please do check out the website. All of the resources are completely free. Lachlan mentioned signposting to grants and things to support your journey. Common Seas do actually provide a school action grant. We make the applications live 3 times a year. So we've just closed our first one and issued a grant to 14 schools. And the next one will be opening in June. So please do sign up, kick off your journey, and then see what support you might need and do apply for that grant. And we obviously promote that once it's live for you to know that it's coming up. And it's a short questionnaire, and you can use it however best suits your school. So whether that's reusable equipment, cups to replace single-use cups, or whether it's time out of the classroom. So if it's a supply teacher, so that you can dedicate some time to this topic, or so that you can take your students on a field trip to a beach, whatever it might be. It's a very open fund to help you on this journey.